I decided when I walked through those doors, I said, Wallahi, I'm never gonna have a normal job for the rest of my life. That was probably the lowest point of my life. And it's hard when other people around you don't really believe in you, or not that they don't believe in you, it's that...
They don't believe in the process.
Yeah, they don't believe in the process. Trading, in my opinion, is the best tool for money. Problems only stay a problem, if you think about the problem. Most of these people, they make most of their money off the courses and off the affiliate links and all of that sort of stuff. They don't live what they talk. No one buys a Lambo off signals. No one moves to Dubai off signals. And I'm only saying these things as a metric of success because that's what people think they are. Having a Lambo doesn't mean you're successful. Going to Dubai doesn't make you successful. Most people live this champagne lifestyle of a lemonade wage. If you're going to be tying up 200k of your own money into a broker.
Today's guest is someone who cuts through the noise of the trading hype with raw truths and real results. At just 21 years old, he's built a name for himself as both a funded trader, securing around $60,000 in payouts in around 18 months, and a property entrepreneur, scaling a $60,000 a month Airbnb property portfolio. Whether it's flipping trades or flipping properties, this guy knows how to turn leverage into lifestyle and do it all without the smoke and mirrors. Please welcome to the podcast, Ali Hanish. So let's take it back to the beginning. What and where was your journey started within the industry? And of course, what you've done with your properties?
Yeah. So I first got introduced with trading in about year 9. So I was going on the way to a geography lesson and one of my friends made about £50 off a signal group. Okay. And then I was like, what is this trading thing? I was just on the way to lesson, but it caught my attention and I couldn't stop thinking about it for the whole lesson. I messaged him after school and I said, what was that about? And he said, yeah, I just follow these signals from this signal group. If you want to learn about it, I can send you the link, blah, 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 blah. And little did I know, he was trying to get me to join so he could join, he could get some referrals as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the first time I ever saw what trading was. And growing up, going throughout school, I always knew I wasn't going to do anything academic. I knew that I was going to try to do something in the business route, whatever that was. I tried pretty much most online businesses, whether it's Amazon FBA, drop shipping, all that sort of stuff. And I always got led back to trading. I left trading the last thing because I thought it was the hardest one. I was like, it seems kind of alienated to me, just being able to read candles and make this amount. And it seemed fake to me at the beginning. Yeah, and then after that, this was in school. I didn't sit my GCSEs because there was a little thing going on around the time, a little disease. Then I went to college. When I was at college, that's when I said to myself I was actually going to lock in with trading, because at that time I was doing Amazon FBA and I was making half decent money from it. But with Amazon FBA, you have to reinvest a lot to make a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of commissions involved as well. So I decided to scrap that off. And I said, you know what, I'll just fully lock in with trading. It's the last thing that I've wanted to do in the whole online space. If not, then I'll just admit defeat and I'll go work a normal job. Yeah. Yeah, so I was just learning how to properly start trading college times. When it got to the end of my college, I went to college 2 years, that's when trading just started to pick up for me. So I was just started to become profitable at that stage. And it was the time for me to go to university, but I didn't want to go to university. So I took a gap year, which never ended up being a gap year. I just never went to uni at all. Yeah, during that time, I was getting pressed by my parents saying, why didn't you go to uni? You should go to uni. You need to get a job, yada, yada, yada. And when you come from a family, when you come from a hard-working family, they just want you to be always working non-stop. And the thing is with trading and all these online businesses, they don't necessarily see the work that actually goes into it because they're never in your room all the time.
It's sort of preordained, especially from a working class family. It's the upbringing is always work, income, educate. In that circle, it's a circle of life. Trying to break that circle is hard for a lot of people because they don't see it as necessarily the right thing. They think, oh no, you're making the worst choices, the worst mistakes, you're going to lose it all, and it's never going to go anywhere.
They can't comprehend that you can make this much of the internet because they're just used to manual labor sort of jobs. So for you to say you can make a doctor's degree, you can make a doctor's wage just by pressing a few buttons, they will never believe it. So yeah, then I left college and I didn't go to uni, and then I got my first ever full-time job, which was at Volkswagen. So when I was applying for jobs, I said to myself, what is the highest paying job that I can do? It's either getting into being an estate agent or a car salesman, because I know that they make quite a bit of commissions. I tried to get into those two. I didn't get any of them. I ended up getting a job at Volkswagen as a service advisor. So a service advisor is just, if you have something wrong with your car, your car needs servicing, you come to me. It's a glorified receptionist. That's what it is. Obviously, before that, I had normal jobs, like normal part-time jobs. Like I got my first part-time job when I was 15 at a cafe in town. I was a pot wash. So, and I only got that first job because I wanted to save up £1,000 for a moped. And I got that £1,000. I never ended up getting a moped.
Yeah. Always the way. Something else that they needed.
Yeah. I guess after that, throughout my secondary school, college times, I had part-time jobs, whether it was Sainsbury's, Sports Direct, Euro Car Parts. But having those normal jobs sort of grounded me and realized how much I didn't want to have a normal job for the rest of my life, because it taught me, and I see other people's lives, and it's not that there's anything wrong with working a normal job, but I just knew deep down that I wanted to achieve something bigger, something with more freedom. And I'd see people's lives, and it's almost like they get trapped in as comfort. So they get comfortable with the job, and then they decide to never expand. Which is why comfort's the worst thing that you could have in any industry.
Comfort's the killer of ambition.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And then I was at Volkswagen, and I ended up getting fired. Okay, so with Volkswagen, you have a 6-month probation period. And in those 6 months, they'd keep seeing me on my phone trading, my laptop trading, and I'd always go to the toilets. So when it got to the 6-month mark, they never renewed my contract. And it was sort of a mutual decision for me to leave, because I wanted to leave at that point because my trading just started to pick up. But obviously, just for my parents' peace of mind, I just kept the job at that time as well. After that, I got fired. And since then, I've been doing trading full time. As soon as I'd left that job, I wasn't the most financially stable person. My trading wasn't booming at that time. But I decided, when I walked through those doors, I said, Wallahi, I'm never going to have a normal job for the rest of my life. Yeah. So I made that promise to myself. And that's one thing that people don't value. People don't value themselves. They value other people's opinions more. So people, if I promise you we're going to have this meeting at 12 o'clock, most times, most people are going to stick to that deadline. But if they tell themselves, I'm going to lose X amount of weight, they don't end up doing it. I'm going to make this much, or I'm going to do X, Y, Z. They don't value themselves enough, which is one thing that I did have, and I still do have, which is why I stuck to my word. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, since then, I've just been doing trading full time, and it wasn't easy at that time. Because my trading wasn't booming off, I have to speak to my parents all the time and say, Ali, when are you going to get another job? When are you going to get another job? And that was probably the lowest point of my life, because you have something that's half working, it's not fully working, it's not fully booming off yet. And you show your P&Ls to your parents every now and then, but it's like, it's nothing impressive. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's hard when other people around you don't really believe in you, or not that they don't believe in you, it's that they don't believe
in the process.
Yeah, they don't believe in the process. And the one thing that you have to have as an entrepreneur, as a trader that's trying to make it, is the never-ending doubt and delusion that you are going to make it. Since a young age, I've been delusional with everything that I've done. Like, if I put my mind to something, I know that I'm gonna eventually make it at whatever field that I do. Alex Hormozi said, if you put enough time into something, you want to work so hard that the amount of input that you put into something doesn't make sense for you to not succeed at it.
Well, they say it takes 10,000 hours to master a craft. So whatever you're doing or whatever you're learning, 10,000 hours before you've become a master at that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the thing is with trading, it's a lot more mental warfare than most businesses. So trading, everyone says trading is majority psychology, which is true. Obviously you need a strategy that works, but if you don't have the correct mindset and you don't have the right, frame of mind, if you have greed, if you have doubt, all of those things is something that's gonna massively hinder your trading progress. At the end of the day, the only thing that you have to do as a trader is read price action. If you read price action with a cloudy mind, if you read price action coming off a loss, all of these mental things is gonna come in and impact, your outcome of your trade. People think it's as simple as pressing a button, but it's not as simple as just pressing a button. You know, sometimes if I have a really bad week or I've had a really bad day, something going on in my personal life, I'll make the conscious decision to not trade because I know that me coming into that trade with a cloudy mind is gonna, you know, hinder the outcome that's gonna come out of the trade. You know, they say that a human can only make 2 emotional decisions in a day. So, you know, that's why in my personal trading strategy, I limit myself to maximum 2 trades in a day. The first one, if I take a losing trade, it's like, okay, I can, you know, try to overcome this one. If I take another losing trade or another trade after that, I know that anything else after that is either going to be revenge trading or I'm just going to try keep going for home runs if it's a winner.
So obviously you mentioned a lot of psychological aspects there, which you found yourself was quite hard to get into the flow and get it in.
Yeah.
Obviously trying to impress your parents, multiple jobs that you would argue are character building exercises.
Yeah.
You would argue that they've built your character to where it needs to be now.
100%.
Not just psychologically, but your mindset going forward at a young age as well.
Yeah.
Going through it while trying to navigate the parental situation of here's my background, this is what I'm expected to do, but instead this is what I am doing.
Yeah.
What do you find now is your staple point, like a routine, a daily routine that you find before you look at the charts, before you get in, before you think about anything trading? What would you say is your daily routine that doesn't deviate? It is this, and if something breaks that, you don't do anything. It's just like, this is my mindset.
Yeah. So I'm a Muslim, so my deen is a massive part of my everyday life. So I'd say my deen and my religion is what helps me get through the unprofitable phase of trading as well. So in Islam, there's a saying, it says, you tie your camel and then you put your trust in Allah. So what that means is when you tie your camel, that is you putting in the work. That is you doing the back testing. It is you putting in the hours, the late nights, the early mornings. You know, when I had a 9-to-5 job and all my part-time jobs, you can either make excuses or you can actually do what's necessary to become successful. Before I would start my shift, if I was still in my learning phase, I would wake up at 6 a.m. And it sounds cliche, but hard work actually is the only thing that actually matters. Before my shift, I would do my analysis, or I'd set my before work, I would set my key points, my take profit and stop loss areas. I would put my alerts. When I was at work, I wouldn't have to check that much because I've already got my alerts set. You know, if it goes off, then I just have a quick check, do what I need to do, and that's it. In Islam, there's an ayah that says, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. So essentially what that means is if you are grateful, then I will give you more. And I've experienced that in my sort of journey. You know, whenever I've been fixated on a loss, I've not seen anything good come after that. You know, but if you focus on what you're grateful for, that also stops the negative psychology because you're not being depressed anymore. Do you know what I mean? Problems only stay a problem, you know, if you think about the problem. So if you just try to avoid the problem, think about the good, think about what you're grateful for. For me personally, I've seen more growth that way.
So you would argue that as well as a great mindset and from where you've come from, the religion has helped you come where you are because you're following it. Obviously, that's very strict, very along the narrow. So that's give you processes in place to help you follow sort of a strict regime,
100%.
we'll say, as well as getting into your mindset and your positivity that would allow you to look at the markets, assess trades or enter or exit. If there is a day you don't trade, generally what follows that? What has to be that breaking point to go, it's not happening today, I'm leaving it alone, I'm coming back tomorrow?
So I use technical analysis and fundamental analysis. So every single week on a Sunday, I do my weekly outlook. So what that consists of is I go through Forex Factory. I look at what high impact news is coming out, what low impact news is coming out. Based off that, then I can work out what sort of trade I'm going to be taking. I have 2 models, either an intraday setup or an intra-week setup. So essentially, one's an intraday and one's going to be a swing. And I base my decision on which one I'm going to take based on how much volatility there's going to be in the week. So if there's a week with FOMC, CPI, PPI, anything high impact, I would say that I don't really want to get caught out in the chop, which a lot of traders do end up getting caught out in. So I'm going to take a swing position. I have a conservative stop loss, and what I try to do, I try think where is high of the week, low of the week going to be set. Once I know where that sort of area is going to be, I wait. if high of the week looks like it's clearly been set and there's been a displacement, then I would just enter.
Yeah.
Maybe either a market execution or whether it be, off a imbalance, whether it be fair value gap or order block. But usually I just trade the fair value gaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if it's not a massively red folder week, then I would look for an intraday position. My intradays, I would basically the same sort of thing. I would look for either higher the day to be made, lower the day to be made. Then I would just try catch the expansion. So everyone in trading obviously knows what a candle is.
Yeah.
So I basically just try and anticipate what the daily candle is going to look like and the weekly candle is going to look like. And that's
so you keep it sort of pretty, I say pretty direct and pretty sort of conservative with the way you approach. Do you use any external reports like COT reports, DOM order flows? Do you use anything like that to sort of aid in it? I know you mentioned obviously your fundamentals there and you use sort of Forex Factory.
Yeah.
Do you use any external analysis, or is it just what the chart is showing you, what the candle and price action is doing on that feed? You don't, because a lot of people obviously within the industry will have multitude of charts, different feeds, they'll use different brokers, as we know. You see this with a lot of influencers. They'll go, look, we use this, but we trade on this. Is there anything else that you would use externally to sort of aid your position making with that setup?
No, literally, I just trade pure price action. So in my opinion, price only moves towards liquidity and imbalances. So I just mark out highs and lows, on the 4 hour, the daily, using the DXY. I use the DXY to get my overall bias. I use that as, the sort of kingpin. And then after I know where DXY is going to go, I can see where the Euro USD and GBP USD is going to go. They're the only two pairs that I trade, okay, because they are the most traded pairs. They've got the most volatility. DXY is directly inversely correlated to the Euro USD chart and the GBP USD chart. So if the DXY is going up, Euro USD is going to go down. So it just makes my life a lot easier, and it's just a confluence that I use.
So how, obviously you talked about correlation there, negative and positive correlation from strength indexes to obviously the pairs themselves. Yeah. What a lot of people, what I've noticed or come to notice within the industry, a lot of people don't understand how heavily influenced correlation is, whether it's negative, whether it's positive. There are traders out there that will wait for a move in the DXY, and as you said, if one goes long, the other goes short, and vice versa. What happens in times where there's no correlation or there's inverse correlation, where the DXY is going up and EU is going up? I'm assuming it puts the strategy off, and you're like, right, I'm not trading here because I've got no confluences to go by, or do you still sort of take a leap of faith per se and go, actually, I'm confident in the setup? Everything else is there, it's just this. Do you still go for it? Yeah, so most of the time, if DXY and Euro USD and GBP USD are all going in the same way, that is a big red flag for me to say, sit down, don't bother trading. Everyone that's in the trading space feels like that they have to take a trade in a day, and they feel like if they don't take a trade in a day that they're going to not see progression, But half of your job as a trader is to take a trade, and the other half of your job is to know when not to trade. And if anything, knowing when not to trade is 100 times more important than knowing when to trade. Being able to identify when bad price action is about is one thing that's going to stop you from blowing funded accounts. It's going to stop you from getting all this stress and headache for no reason. It's just going to be so much more beneficial for you. So when the time that you're off the charts is the time that you need to be able to know how to properly sit on your hands, how to not jump the gun, how to not just get greedy and say, oh, I'm not taking a trade in a week, which sometimes is the case for me. Average, I take about 1 to 3 trades in a whole week. So sometimes if there is massive red news, or if there is, typically off data, NFP weeks is usually my least traded week. Most of the time I don't really take it because I work off probabilities. So if the chance of NFP coming out, the chance of there being a massive chop fest is very high. So I just don't bother trading. So you don't follow along the lines of the old saying, the old saying, as they say, buy the rumor, sell the fact.
No, definitely not. I just keep myself to myself, and if there's something that tells me not to trade, most of the time I just want to
stay out. Yeah. And I'm assuming when you're not trading, then you're jumping into obviously the property portfolios you mentioned earlier. Yeah. You're big, obviously, in that space as well. So I'm assuming that gives you sort of a secondary line of, right, if I'm not trading today, that always needs time and input from myself anyway.
Yeah.
And that, I suppose, people would argue that that is a benefit for you because it's something else you're doing that's not keeping you fixated to charts, to price, to things. But when you're dealing with the property side, are you obviously still thinking about Forex? Are you still thinking about what ifs? Or are you just switched off, mindset gone, I'm now just properties, I've got the Airbnbs, this needs looking after, or this needs my attention?
Yeah, so 100% what you said there, having another business, having another income is going to significantly increase the chance of you being profitable. Because number one, when you're trading from a place inside where you're struggling, where you're deprived, that is what's going to ultimately lead you to making the dumb, stupid decisions. So if you can avoid that by having a job, you know, I had multiple jobs in my time when I was learning how to trade. Why? Because you're not depending on it. You're not going to be making those dumb decisions. Within regards to me using up my time and having more free time, now it's at a point where I don't really have to do much with my Airbnbs. I've got 2 assistants, they do most of the work with customer service. I have people that find properties for me. You know, I've delegated most of my tasks. So now the only thing I really have to do is just go to the flats and build some furniture, you know, just have a bit of a laugh with my mates. Because at the end of the day, when you're doing trading, it's a very lonely job. You know, you don't have to have anyone else to trade, especially if you've not got any friends in the industry that you're in. I'm from York originally, so coming from that city, it's a small city. It's got a very small city mindset. So no one's got big dreams, big ambitions. So me having all these dreams and ambitions, it sort of set me to the side, because when other people are trying to go out, sometimes I would go out, but most of the time you get to a stage where you realize you have to lock in and you can't just be going out aimlessly.
Future-proof. You need to future-proof yourself, which seems to be a common theme with anyone that sort of progressively becomes responsible in their lives and sort of maturing. Yeah. Well, we'll argue and say it's maturing because you've got to at some point lock in, understand that I can go out, I can do all this, but what am I going to have in 10 years to show for that? What am I going to have in 20? Yeah. Whereas you've done the flip side now, you've gone, right, we've got the properties, let's lock in this, let's get it to a stage where it becomes sort of self-sufficient, arguably. Yeah. Whereas it doesn't need as much of your time, which allows you to then spend that time you would be on it on everything else. Yeah. But on the flip side to that, getting there would have been arguably emotional turmoil, should we say.
100%.
Psychological aspect of getting you there has to be almost soul destroying in argument.
It is, and if you don't have the discipline, if you don't have the delusion, which is one thing that I emphasize on a lot, it's that, you know, the only difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is that the successful people just stuck at it for longer than the unsuccessful ones. You know, I don't want to keep talking about religion, but the one thing that did help me get through that very, very, very low point was, you know, my prayers. You know, knowing that there's ultimately a higher power that's, you know, in Islam there's something called qadr. You know, it's something that's already written for you. And I just believed deep down in my heart that I was meant for more. You know, it sounds silly, okay, but I remember back in primary school when I was leaving year 5, year 6. It's so cringe, okay. But I signed my book and I gave it to my teacher. I said, here, listen, keep this for a few years. Maybe later down the line it'll be worth a few quid. Because from deep down, the delusion, I always knew and I wanted to be something. Even though now I'm not my final form, but I know I'm on the right path to be
striving for greater prospects for yourself.
Yeah. What was the original point that you said? I sort of went off topic there.
We said about the mindset, obviously there would have been emotional turmoil there. So then you turned it into, you went to school, signed the book, obviously religion was a big driving factor in getting you where they were, and picking up from there. Yeah.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, you do need to still be going on the right path. You know, I could be, you know, I went on YouTube before I got any sort of mentor, and I went on YouTube and I watched every single free YouTube tutorial there was about how to trade. Supply and demand, Wyckoff, everything, you name it, I've watched it. Some of them do work, some of them don't work, but you know, you do, obviously, to be a profitable trader, you have to have a strategy that does work and that works for you. Me personally, none of those sort of trading methods or trading styles work for me. So no matter if I stayed doing them for 4, 5, 6 years, I'll probably still be unprofitable. So in order to get out of that sort of unprofitable phase, you need to find a strategy that works for you, tailored for you. So for example, me, I don't really like a lot of stress. If I'm trading the M1, it's a lot more demanding. You have to be on your phone checking, every few seconds. And then I just found a strategy that does work for me. I stuck at it for long enough, and eventually I became profitable. It's a simple process that everyone thinks is, everyone thinks that there's this golden ticket you have to try find. Everyone thinks that there's this strategy that works more than others. Every strategy, borderline works the same amount. It's just you finding what works for you and sticking at it for long enough.
You would argue, yeah, you mentioned there are a few strategies that you touch base on. I think the driving factor behind them is, as you say, every strategy has its place and has its use. Some strategies work different markets, different sessions, different times. Obviously, seasonality becomes a big thing as well. But with the strategies and the win ratios, a lot of people would argue that there's other driving factors behind them. As we know, there's some people that get very deep into technicals, fundamentals. You mentioned Wyckoff. Wyckoff is quite arguably, it is one of the most advanced strategies out there. To go through and to understand, people have tried to learn Wyckoff for 5, 6, 7 years, and they still don't understand the basics. Other people, very short times. But you would argue that a lot of concepts are based in one way or another around Wyckoff, even from institutional to prop trading, doesn't matter, any markets. People argue stocks, shares, CFDs, futures. People use Wyckoff as a fundamental basis, and they use sort of what I've seen 3 key components. You test your spring and your phase, or your phase B, as it were. Then you test in your spring. They sort of use that fundamental analysis. Now, some people don't obviously use that. They use different aspects of price action. Do you touch to... Fuck, I lost the chain then. Do you touch deeply into Wyckoff, or do you use parts of it for your own strategy, or is your strategy not based on relying on anything externally on other aspects of different strategies?
I mean, I don't know Wyckoff inside out like that, but what I would say is that my main thing is finding out what the weekly bias and the daily bias is. Having that sort of narrative and going into the market with a clear idea of where I want price to go. At the end of the day, as a trader, it's your job to react to the markets, not make the markets do what you want. So a lot of people, they end up taking losses because they think a lot of people end up taking losses because they think price action has to do what they want, and they get set in stone on a bias. They get set and say, okay, I want the euro to be shorts this week. No matter what, I'm going to be selling the euro. Which is why they end up staying unprofitable, because they don't flow with the markets. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
So obviously we've gone into basis on your strategy, and obviously you've got a property portfolio below you which that serves you really well. What would you then say to people, and this obviously you must get this a lot, what would you then say to people is, why are you trading prop firms? Why are you not trading a broker? Because we all know this comes up. Everyone asked it. Why props? Why not brokers? If you've got this money, why have you not got this magic 7-figure brokerage account and all the rest of it that comes with it, the private jets, the streams, the fake holidays? We see it all the time on different aspects, social media. What is your answer then to people that don't understand the leverage, first of all, you can get from proprietary trading? And also the drawbacks of broker trading, that you're locked into that. It's your own money. So the risk is a lot greater and the psychological effect is 10 times worse on you.
To be honest with you, I don't really have those conversations with people that ask that sort of question, because as soon as you ask me that sort of question, it sort of tells me what kind of a trader you are and what kind of a person you are. But I would say that obviously if you're going to be tying up 200k of your own money into a broker, just from an entrepreneurial point of view, if I put 200k into, Airbnb units or a different business, it's going to generate you much more than the £4,000 to £8,000 or dollars, whatever that you're using. Why would I put 200,000 of my own capital when I could pay £500, £400, whatever prop firm offers at that time, and not take that option? I can get the same leverage for 1/100th of the cost. It's a no-brainer.
But people would argue that obviously, pending a challenge type you take with a prop, you've got your 1 steps, your instant, your 2 steps. So there's multiple phases to pass. People would say, but the pass rate is low The payouts are risky, the industry is in turmoil, whatever. If I stick the money in a broker, that's my money. I can withdraw when I want. I've got this. I own that. Whereas, argumentatively, with a prop, you could do this, or you could have 5% on there, and that last day you make a huge mistake and you've blown it all.
I'd say you're too unprofitable. You're not profitable enough yet to be using prop firms, and people like to use brokers and all of these things as a safety net because number one, obviously there's less rules, obviously it's less headache, but at the end of the day, people trade for money. What can you make more money on? Your own broker or using prop firms. Most people don't have 200k liquid just sat there to put into a broker. And yes, you could have an account with 10,000, 20,000. Me personally, I used to have a 5-figure live account, but then I got to a stage where it was like, what's the point of me even doing this? I'm making a couple grand off a trade where I could take all that money out, reinvest it into a business, which is exactly what I did. I reinvested majority of that into my Airbnb portfolio, and now I'm making the same, if not more, from using prop firms.
Yeah, so you're making more money outside of the brokerage, but on the flip side to it, then people could say, well, you weren't trading that brokerage account correct, because most institutional places won't sort of risk your 0.5s, your 1%, your 2. Some places go 3, 4, 5% risk on a position to make X, Y, and Z. As we know, a lot of institutional places don't use a fixed stop loss. They use sort of, we'll argue, mental guidelines. So they have key levels that they look for, whether it's support and resistance, whatever the strategy may be. Once price is near that level, they'll follow price action. They'll make a decision on, right, do we leave it open? Do we add? Do we dollar cost average on that position and put some more on? So it's quite an interesting world coming from sort of having a look at the other side of the coin, we'll say, from prop trading. But obviously then you've got the flip side to prop trading is if I do get a payout, this has cost me $500, $600, $700, $800, whatever the case may be. I've passed. I'm now up 2, 3, 4, 5%. I get 80%, 90%, whatever it is, of that revenue that I've generated, and I go again. So you would argue there's pros and sides, both sides of the coin. Not so much not being profitable per se for people not wanting to do a brokerage account, but you would argue that it's horses for courses. It's what suits.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I've done both. I've done live accounts and I've done funded accounts. Me personally, at this stage of my life, I think that funded accounts are much better. I'm not sat on millions liquid. If, inshallah, one day I do get to that point and I've just so happen to have £1 million left over spare, and I'll just chuck it into a live broker account, and then at that point, that's when it would make sense for you to use brokers, because at that point, the risk to reward makes more sense for you to do live than funded accounts, But at this stage of my life, this is what works for me, and it's what works for me, and it's what's going to work for 99.9% of people.
Yeah, that makes sense. So obviously you made sort of around 60,000, as you said, and obviously you got smart. You used that money to leverage into your Airbnb and your property portfolio, which you then sort of leveraged to, let's say, fund your lifestyle, as it were. You've managed to buy dream cars. You bought your C63S, which nice car, suits people.
Thank you.
Other people, you managed to get your dad Range Rover SVR. So that sort of you're appeasing your family. You're sort of proving to them what you mentioned earlier and touch base on that. They didn't believe in it at the start, but now they're seeing the rewards starting to come from this. Obviously, that's going to change their mindset, and you're not just single-handedly going, right, this is the money, here's my payout, spent that payout, chase for another one. You're leveraging that, and you're always leveraging your money to sort of make gains here, whether it's, I'm going to invest in this because that's going to give me more money, I'll invest in this. You're not just sitting on social media trying to influence and sort of sell a dream to people that isn't feasible. You're making it happen and proving that you can leverage money as many times as needed to reach whatever targets you want.
I mean, trading can be used as... Trading, in my opinion, is the best tool for money. You don't have to... Obviously, once you've learned the skill, you can make... The potential is unlimited from what you can make from it. And learning how to properly invest in that, learning how to recycle that, is what's going to, number one, generate you more incomes and going to make your actual trading much better. Okay. And to be honest with you, most traders, when they get a payout, they just end up blowing it. They spend it on dumb shit. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, swear.
Huh? That's gonna watch it. Yeah. They're gonna spend it on dumb stuff, buy designer to try and impress people. And all of these influencers, what they do is they end up buying cars way before they can afford it. They buy designer way before they can afford it, just so they can promote the mentorship and sell. Most of these people, they make most of their money off the courses and off the affiliate links and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
They don't live what they talk. Do you know what I mean? I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited for my turn. Now it's my turn. Now I've managed to get my dream cars. I managed to live a certain life. I don't live like Ronaldo, but I live better, a lot better than what I used to live. Do you know what I mean? And that came off the basis of me learning how to reinvest my money. When I get a payout, what to do with it. Put it in certain places. For me, it was property. If you give a man a fish, you'll feed him for the day. If you teach a man to fish, you'll feed him for life. That sort of ties down to the psychological aspect of all of my investments, whether I've made it from property, trading, is just learning the skill and actually applying it rather than taking signals, trying to take any shortcuts. Because I promise you, the more shortcuts that you take, the further you are going to get from your actual destination. There's no such thing as shortcuts. If you try to take signals, no one buys a Lambo off signals. No one moves to Dubai off signals. And I'm only saying these things as metric of success because that's what people think they are. Having a Lambo doesn't mean you're successful. Going to Dubai doesn't make you successful. Most people live this champagne lifestyle of a lemonade wage. It's easy to be a facade on the internet, and that's just something that I try not to be.
Yeah, that pretty much rounds it up. We've got a good coverage on your market mindset on how and where you've come from. Thank you very much for coming in, Ali. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me.